No matter how dark things seem to be, or how desperate it seems, there is something you should know. Let the love of God still flows. God answers prayer, and you to know He's always there. When you stand in faith and pray, believing, trusting God in this dark deceiving, to know how much He cares. God answers, oh God answers prayer.
Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and I will show thee great and mighty things thou knowest not."
Join us now to hear great and mighty things that have happened in the lives of people who have been changed through our Lord Jesus as they share their testimonies of how God answers prayer.
Welcome to God Answers Prayer. I'm Linda Cobb, and I'm your host today, and just very excited to be with you to hear how God is answering prayer in the lives of people. And you know what? What He has done for others, He will do for you. We have a scripture that's found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 8. "Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me." On today's God Answers Prayer, we have Senior Pastor Alfonso Antillon and his wife and co-pastor Patricia, and they are with Majesty Worship Center Church. They will be sharing about how the Lord delivered them, restored their marriage, and actually called them into full-time ministry. Pastor Alfonso will also be talking about Soldiers of the Cross, which is the men's ministry and a men's conference. We'll be right back with Pastor Alfonso and Patricia right after this.
Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good, and His love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords, His love endures forever. To Him alone who does great wonders, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. Who by His understanding made the heavens, His love endures forever. To Him who spread the earth upon the waters, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. Give thanks to Him who made the great lights, His love endures forever. The sun for the day, the moon and stars at night, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. To Him who gives food to every creature, His love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of heaven, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever. His love, His love, His love endures forever and ever.
Well, I want to welcome our pastors here on the set, Pastor Alfonso and co-pastor Patricia. And it's so good to have you with us here on God Answers Prayer.
Thank you for having
And,
us.
you know, let's just get to know you a little bit. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up here in Albuquerque
Uh-huh.
all my life, and I did travel a little bit, but green chili always brings you back.
Oh, it does. Absolutely.
Yes.
And how about you?
Yeah, I grew up here in Albuquerque too, in the South Valley,
Uh-huh.
part of Albuquerque, and that's where we've lived all of our life.
Wow.
Hmm.
So how did you meet?
I was working at a grocery store,
Uh-huh.
and he used to work for Brink's armor truck,
Right.
and he would pick up the money in the store. And so one day he walked in with a bag of money, and I thought it was his. And, that's where we met. But you know, Linda, actually 3 years before I met him, the Lord showed me in a vision, showed me a vision of him and said, this is going to be your husband. So on that day when I saw him for the first time, I said, that's my husband.
Wow.
The Lord showed me exactly to what he was going to be wearing, and it was amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And so how, well, we're going to talk about how you came into a walk with the Lord, because at that time, well, were you walking with the Lord?
Yes.
Okay. And how about you, Pastor?
No, I
No.
was not walking with the Lord, and that's why the Lord didn't give me a vision of my wife, you know. But
Yeah.
but you know, that's where our journey started. That's where we met, and you know, and I changed positions at my job, so to have an excuse to come back to the store every day, I would go before work every day to buy orange juice and go through her line, because her line was the only line available, open at that time in the morning, and then we just became friends, and then we just I
Yeah.
invited her out, and she accepted, and then she canceled, and then she accepted again, and she canceled again, and I'm like, I don't
The
know.
third time was a charm.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, you know. I'm like, this is it. If she
She does
tells
it
me,
again.
yeah. So, and that's how we started.
Yeah.
That's how we started. We dated for about 4 years, 4.5 years before we did get married.
Wow.
But I seen my wife had a lot of faith, and I didn't grow up in the church. I mean, I went to church occasionally, but I wasn't a believer. I knew of God and
Right.
stuff like that, but I wasn't.
No relationship.
Yeah, no relationship
Yeah.
with the Lord at
Yeah.
all.
So Patricia, how did you come to faith?
Oh gosh, that's a long story for another day, but short story long is I was as a teenager an alcoholic and a drug addict.
Oh.
I had ran away and almost got killed by a trash truck that day. That day going home, I heard Amazing Grace coming out of the doors of this little church in my neighborhood, and I sat on the steps to listen to the music. I was drawn in, and when they did the altar call, I can't even remember standing up. It's like my flesh needed it so bad. And at 14, I gave my life to the Lord.
Wow. And so that began a walk of
Oh,
faith.
yes, it did. But also of trials, because you know
Yes.
that when you give your life to the Lord and you're coming out of addictions, the enemy's going to come at you with everything he has, and he did.
Oh, wow.
And he did.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that I even lived long enough to meet my husband.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to have to hear that story one day.
Yes.
And Alfonso, so you were working for Brink's, and you didn't really know the Lord in the sense of really of intimacy.
You know,
but
the partner that I had when I was working for Brinks was a believer.
really,
Very strong believer. And when my route changed to Santa Fe, that was my route, was Santa Fe, and there would be days that I would have him drive because I came in, not feeling well from the night before, of alcohol and stuff. So he always would give me his Bible, and he'd tell me, you better start studying the Bible. You better start. I mean, he'd literally pull over the truck, and because of the respect and the admiration I had for this man, I listened to him. Nothing stuck at the moment, but I did listen to him, and I did have a lot of respect because of the faith that he had. I'm like, wow, this man has a lot of faith. But then when I would go back home and get off of work, it was like the same old stuff, you know what I'm saying? But this man, he became like a mentor there in my workplace. And in 99, in 2000, he got killed.
Oh.
Him and his wife were, he had just finished preaching out of a church, and him and his wife, he was giving the altar call, and during the altar call, they told me that he was telling the congregants that they better get right with Jesus because they can leave here and be in an accident on the freeway on their way home. Well, him and his wife were in a pretty bad accident, and it took his life. And at that time, I still wasn't, I felt bad for a little while because I missed him, because of the encouragement that he gave me, but I continued living my life. And my wife and I, we got married in 2003, and it was literally, I took my wife through a deep valley of darkness, and for a very long time that started to shake her faith. And I take full responsibility for that because my wife, she has been such an amazing woman, an amazing wife. Even when I was living in the world and living worldly and drinking and alcohol, and this woman was like, to this day, I've never seen a person with as much faith as my wife.
And that really comes from, like you said, God giving you a vision and showing you, and you know that this is of Him, and that you're in, He chose you to go through a battle with Him.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing. And, you know, he puts people together.
Absolutely.
So they can be strong together. But, Alfonso, why do you think you got involved in the alcohol and all of that?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going out and partying and living that kind of lifestyle with women, and I wasn't ashamed of my sin. I mean, I didn't have no conviction. I mean, I'm like, everybody's doing it, so you know, I'm gonna do it as well. And I really didn't, but I knew some things that I was doing were not right. I mean, my parents didn't bring me up like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought us up with respect and with admiration. But I mean, I think I got to a certain age to where I have to make my own decisions, and I made bad decisions that really costed me a lot of years and costed my wife a lot of heartache and a lot of worry and stuff. And in 2007, my wife heard from the Lord that to leave. I mean, to like, let me deal with this man. I need to deal with this man, but you're in the way, because my wife had been praying for me and praying for me, but she was trying to save me.
Yeah.
And so that's where everything shifted and changed in our lives.
So you went from kind of a codependency then, in a way. Yeah, wow.
You know, what happened was, I think my pride got the best of me, because my wife was still there. Even when I wouldn't come home for days, or when I would come home drunk, she was still there, and she was still she wouldn't treat me any different. I mean, she would give me make me my lunch for work and clean the house. I mean, she just was an amazing woman. I mean, I have no words to explain. So I thought I have her right where I want her. I'm like, this woman's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I can continue living the life that I want, and I was living a double life.
So Patricia, this was kind of an instance where, in order to hold him accountable, you had to step away then.
Well, the thing is that the Lord had been telling me for a few months, you're taking your eyes off of me and you're making him your focus. And I think it was kind of like an Abraham Isaac moment, you know, and it's, are you willing to walk away from him to continue following me? Because see, the thoughts that he was having, the Lord knows the thoughts of our heart. And the Lord knew that he had these intentions. I have a right where I want to. I can continue having affairs. I can continue not coming home. I can continue all this. But let me tell you, when you mess with a daughter of God, it doesn't, he doesn't stay quiet or still about it. He knows how to defend his daughters.
Wow.
And so it took me a few months, but I finally did what the Lord asked me.
You know, I'm loving this because this is real life. And sometimes we have these ideas about how things should be, or people sometimes, even in the church, will judge a situation, but they have no idea what's really going on. And,
Exactly.
and the Lord really works with each one of us individually according to, like you said, He knows. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows your thoughts. So it wasn't just alcohol either, was it?
No.
Tell us about that, Alfonso.
It was adultery, pornography. I brought all this stuff to my home, and it was a time that was so hard, because after the fact that my wife left, and I was just, when my wife left, I really didn't see it as her leaving. I'm like, well, now I don't have to hide my sin. I'm free to do whatever I want. I don't have nobody to hold me accountable. But it seemed like the dark cloud around me just got darker and darker and darker. And I finally came to a point to where I was drinking a fifth of tequila daily. Wow. And my mom, at the time, she because I was living at their house in the spare bedroom, she had a burrito route. She used to go out and sell burritos and stuff, so I would spend most of the morning by myself at home. And I would go to the near liquor store and try to hide it as much as I could. But I was hurting. I was in pain. I just couldn't realize where my life was at the time. I'm like, man, here I am, grown man, and I have nothing to show for it. And so on April 26th of 2007, I finally decided, I said, this is it. I'm ending it today. I remember that day like if it was yesterday. I was sitting on the side of the bed, and I got my 9mm, and I said, this is it. This is it. It's over. I had already written a suicide note, but my oldest brother that gave his life to the Lord 6 months before I did, called me just to share the love of Christ. He had no idea. He didn't know what I was about to do till like years later.
Wow.
And he told me that he was getting baptized that evening, and if I would come. And so I'm like, wow, all right, I'll be there, So I went to church that night and watched him get baptized, and I answered the altar call that night, and my life's never been the same since. I haven't drank since. It's already been 13 years. It hasn't, and it's just, I'm still taking it one day at a time. One day at a time.
Right.
Our marriage is amazing. I have such an amazing wife. Just what the Lord has done, what the Lord can do when a man comes to the altar and submits his life to the Lord. And that's where the scripture, Isaiah 6:8 came in. And I said, here I am, Lord, send me, and I'll do whatever you want.
Wow. So, did you stop drinking immediately?
Yes, immediately.
Did you stop with the pornography immediately? And never, that's it. It was done.
The struggle was still there, because I got help for all these. I got help at the church for pornography. I was in counseling, so I took the proper steps. But I kept telling myself, if I fall into this stuff again, then God's not going to give me another opportunity. I might lose my wife forever. So I had that fear of the Lord that just instilled in me, and I said, I said, I can't go back that way. And He continued strengthening me, giving me the strength to carry on, and I was able to open up with my wife a lot more, because till we got to that point, we really didn't know the struggles that we both had. or the history that we had.
Right.
We both brought in a lot of baggage into our marriage that kind of blew up in our face
Yeah.
because we never dealt with it.
Right. So Patricia, dealing with, I mean, the alcohol's big, but then when pornography comes in, that's a whole nother level, especially for the woman.
Yes.
How did, and the adultery, I mean, all of that.
Yes.
I mean, what was happening with you?
I had been through so much in my young life as a teenager before I gave my life to the Lord that I knew that the only hope I had was to hold on to Jesus.
Yeah.
And through everything, I just held on to Jesus. And I knew that if everyone in my life abandoned me, everyone in my life hurt me, everyone in my life walked away from me, I knew that Jesus never would. I just knew that deep in my heart. So I just kept holding on to Jesus, and I just kept asking every day, give me the strength for today.
Right.
Give me the strength for today. And praying for my husband, praying for these women caught in pornography, because I know that it's not something as a little girl you say, oh, when I grow up, I want to be, in pornography. No. Something had to have happened in the lives of these women that made them make that choice. And I
Right.
knew that they were prisoners within the walls of these sex traffickers, if you will. And so I began to pray for the women caught up in pornography. And I began to pray for my husband to get out of that stronghold. I knew it was a stronghold.
Right, right. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, because for a lot of women, even of faith, they would really have some hard times dealing with a lot of that. Yes. But you're right. I mean, we don't realize a lot of times, and sometimes I think we even fool ourselves about how we were raised, and because we want to have this idea of a,
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
like semi-perfection or whatever.
Yeah.
Of course, it's different for everybody in their circumstances, but there are things that, and sometimes they're generational curses and things that were our ancestors, things that were in our very spiritual DNA
Yes.
that affect us, and when we finally begin to see that, then we can bring it to the Lord, and He can begin to heal and pull that out of our lives.
Exactly.
So
And He's the only one who can.
He's the only one who
He's the
can.
only one.
So, yeah. So after that, like you said, your marriage changed.
Yeah, we started marriage counseling. Well, see, my wife didn't. When I got saved, and my wife knew that I had got saved and stuff. It was hard because we were divorced. My wife and I divorced her.
Oh, okay.
Divorced for 8 months.
Yeah.
Really?
So it was hard for when I would talk to her, like to call her Patricia. It was always like my love and babe, and it was just hard to call each other by name. And it just tore me up inside. And so one day we went to church. She met me at church, and she came with me to church, and she didn't want to do marriage counseling. Because I would ask her, I'm like, let's do marriage counseling. We've never went to any kind of counseling. Let's try marriage counseling. She says, nope. She says, we're not getting married. We're not doing this. We're not dating. We're just going to be friends. And I'm just like, I don't want you to be my friend. I want you to be my wife again. And she said, no. And I'm like, and my wife's a very strong-willed woman, and I knew she was serious.
Yeah.
So one day when we went to church, it was time to give our tithes and offerings, and I gave my tithe and stuff. And when we left, my wife tells me, she says, you know what, we'll go to marriage counseling. And I'm like, well, you just finished telling me that I mean, there's not even no opportunity or anything like that of us reconciling our relationship. She says, but now I know that God has your heart. And I'm like, how so? It's because I knew how much your money meant to you. And now I know God has your heart. So when we went to marriage counseling, we didn't know anybody in the church. We're like, we're going to call whatever pastor's available, that's who we're going to go with. And there was only one pastor available, and that was Pastor Lemuel Boyles. That became my mentor for for 10 years until he went to be with the Lord. But this man was a military man. And that's exactly what I needed. I needed somebody to look at me straight in the eyes and set me straight. And, you know, but he really taught me a lot about what being a man of God, a man of faith is all about. And so it was, we went to counseling for about 5 months. And then on our last counseling, I proposed to my wife and she accepted and we got remarried. He married us in his office.
And it was so different the second
Way
time
different.
around.
Way different.
Way different.
Wow.
It was amazing,
Yeah.
amazing, amazing, amazing.
You really did become one flesh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
You know, and for the first year, I still hadn't gained my wife's trust, you know. So for the first year, it was hard for me. But I kept reminding myself, I put myself in that situation, so now I have to earn her trust back. You know, because she would call me and she says, well, I thought you got off at 5. How come you're not home yet? Or how come this? Or she'd always question me of my whereabouts, so I always had to have an answer, and I don't blame her.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would get so frustrated and I would want to lash back, and I'm like, if I lash back, then she's going to see that nothing's really changed. So I just took it the best I could until finally she just knew that I can trust this man now.
Yeah.
Took a year, but you know, we're awesome.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And there were no children?
No.
No
We
children, no?
have 3 children in heaven. I miscarried twice.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yes.
sorry. But, you know, thank God that you were, they weren't having to.
God has
Yeah.
a plan.
Yeah, he does. He
Yes.
does. He does.
I thank him so much that he didn't allow my children to be born in that,
Yeah.
because it would have been so hurtful for
he
them.
gave you
That's
other
it.
children.
Yes,
I'm sure,
yes.
and we're going to find out more
Yeah.
about that.
Yes.
And maybe some of this is actually hitting home with some of you that are watching. So I want you to continue watching, and I also want you to know that we have prayer partners that will pray with you. If you're going through something today, you are not alone. God knows already, but just reach out in prayer and know that there are those that will pray with you. The number is 505-345-4165. And we're going to be right back with Pastor Alfonso and Patricia right after this.
Hi, my name is Kitty, and I'm the coordinator for Sun Broadcasting's prayer ministry. Throughout each week, we have many hurting people calling for prayer. Do you find joy in encouraging others, in speaking hope into the discouraged, rejoicing in praise reports, praying for others to stand firm on God's Word? I invite you to join our team of awesome prayer partners. Call 505-345-1991 for more information. I look forward to hearing from you.
Well, we're back here with Pastor Alfonso and Patricia Antillon with Majesty Worship Center Church. And we've been talking about your marriage and how God began to restore, but there was some unforgiveness issues on both sides, right? That you had to deal with. Tell us about that.
Yes. There sure was. Go ahead.
Go ahead, babe.
Well, the thing is that he had lost my trust. He really did. Through all this, I was praying for him. I was still hoping in the Lord and trying to hold on to faith. But the thing is that he lost my trust when he lost my respect. And the Lord tells us as women to respect our husbands. And so once I lost that respect, I lost the trust. I just couldn't trust him anymore. So even after we got remarried, it took a while. And the thing is I would trust, but then the enemy would come in and say, you know, remind me of things in the past. So I really just had to take it to the Lord in prayer every day. But let me tell you, Linda, part of it too was also I was testing him. I was testing him many times because I wanted to make sure that old man didn't exist anymore.
Right.
The one that used to talk down to me and wipe his feet on me like if I was a carpet. And so I really wanted to test him and see, has this man really given his heart and his life to Jesus? And once about, like he said, about a year went by, then I just had a peace come over me, and I knew, you know what, I can trust him because I can't be with him 24 hours a day, but the Lord is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
and let's face it, the memories are still there, and
Exactly.
there's triggers that replay those memories. Then,
Yes.
so you know, and we need to understand that about each other,
Yes.
so that we don't trigger each other with
Exactly.
things, you know, that are going to cause angst in us. But so. Alfonso, you said you know you were really walking the straight and narrow and kind of on eggshells that first year because
Yeah.
the Lord would draw you up short a little bit, wouldn't He?
So, you know, during that time, I had to like if I was gonna work later, I had to let her know, and if I have to always have an explanation why I wasn't at home when I usually get at home, or did I make any stops, or am I going to the store, or what's going on, and it kind of sounds kind of silly, like oh, I can't believe you had to go through. But I put myself in that situation, and because I was willing to fight for my marriage, I was willing to accept that. That was my fault. It was my responsibility to gain my wife's trust back.
Right.
And the only way to gain her trust back was letting her know that, hey, you know what, I'm good with, if you need to check on me, that's fine. Because, I mean, I know the Lord is with me, and He's the one that's holding me accountable right now. But during this process, the Lord was teaching me how to be a man, how to be a man of my word, how to be a man of integrity, how to be a man to uphold and lift up my wife on a daily basis. And so, you know, when I really don't know exactly when that full trust happened, but I just know that this is who I am now. This is part of my life. This is, nothing's gonna draw me back to where I used to be or where I came from. And just knowing that my wife continued to pray for me, you know, because we started sharing stories after we got back together of the time that we were separate, you know, like what we were doing, and all my wife can tell me that she was praying for me, and I'm like, I'll tell her I went to California, I did this, and all she could say,
praying for you.
and all she could say is, I was praying for you, and I was praying for you, and I really believe with all of my heart that her prayers is what drew me into the Lord, and the seed that was planted by my partner
All those
years
ago.
ago were coming to fruition, you know.
Yes.
And so it's just amazing, and when the Lord brought us back together, and He just lit a fire under us, and I said, babe, I said, you know, there's a lot of couples like us that are struggling right now, and I think that we need to be the voice of the Lord, and we need to go and let these people know that there's hope, and He just gave me a passion for men and a mission to reach men, because we need to be taught how to act. We need to be taught how to be men of God, you know, because we're instilled with pride, and we see it in the church today. Is that the man of God needs to rise up, and he needs to start taking care of his family like he's supposed to take care of his family, and pray for his wife, and really uplift his wife. You know, because I was the kind of person, like, I would get in the circle with my buddies, and we'd all talk about our wives, not good, but just like but the Lord gave me all these visions when I gave my life to Him, and I'm like, why would I ever put myself in that situation? Why did I marry her if this is how I really felt? I mean, I you know, and so it was a process. It was a learning process. I had to learn.
Well, I mean, some of it was probably cultural too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the way things used to be, and
I mean, it's passed down from generation
Yeah,
to generation.
yeah.
I mean, man, you know, being raised in a Mexican household, you know, my parents did the best that with what they knew how, and just as their parents did, and it just keeps going down the line. But I told my wife, I said, it's gonna stop here.
well, and even the church, culturally,
Yes.
had the understanding of the two shall become one, and the way the balance works between the man and the woman, it was always like the man was over instead of being side by side, because I mean the woman came out of Adam's rib
Absolutely.
beside him. So if you're one flesh, then you're really together. But each one has been uniquely created to make that oneness.
Exactly.
So it's that respect and that honor that's there. And but you know, I mean, Patricia, you're probably seeing this too. I mean, there's a lot of women, and of course we've got the women's movement and all this thing that's out there, and you know, there are a lot of strong women that are believing women that know how this works without having to be so dominant that men become emasculated.
Exactly. You know, growing up in a Mexican family, it's always been what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and if the man can do it, you can do it, and you know, and I know that generations past in my family, a lot of women wore the pants, so to speak, in the household, you know, and giving my life to the Lord at a young age, I struggled a lot still, but I would read the Word and I would say it's not supposed to be like this.
Yeah.
It's not. The world has made being submissive to our husbands an ugly word, but I've always seen it as something really beautiful because Christ is my first husband. And I got that deep into my heart. And I realized that if I disrespect him, I'm disrespecting Christ, and I don't care what the world says. I'm very strong-headed, like he said earlier, and I had a lot of women when we divorced, a lot of women who I thought had my best interest in mind would tell me, he's never going to change, you know, once a cheater, always a cheater. But I knew God parted the ocean. God spoke the stars into existence. With his word, the seas exist, and the sun and the moon obey him. If he did that with his spoken word, and I have that power inside of me to pray for him in that way, I know that the power of prayer can change this man.
Absolutely.
And I had to hold on to that. I had to hold on to it because becoming one flesh, when we got divorced, it was like somebody ripped off one side of me. I literally felt spiritually like my arms were being ripped off. My heart was being ripped out, and it was very painful.
Yeah.
And so I wanted not only him back in my life, but I wanted him to come with Jesus.
Yeah.
And I wanted us to be a threefold cord.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that he gave his life to the Lord, I said, now at least I know what I'm fighting for.
Right.
At least I know what I'm fighting for, and I can fight harder.
That's wonderful. So Alfonso, the Lord really put on your heart about men.
Yes.
And so what did you do with that?
So I started getting involved in prison ministry, reaching the men that are in prison, incarcerated. And I've had the opportunity to mentor a lot of men coming out of prison. And also we have a discipleship. Ever since we started the ministry, we've always been big on discipleship, on discipling men. And then we, 9 years ago, this will be our 9th year, we started a men's conference, Soldiers of the Cross. And the reason I chose Soldiers of the Cross, because when you think about a soldier, you think of a man's man.
Right.
He has his armor on, he has his weapons, he has his guns, he has everything covered, right? And I said, but now we're fighting for the cross. We're of the cross. We're men that we have a purpose in our lives now. And so we started this men's conference. That our first men's conference was, I think, maybe like 15 or 20 men, and just throughout the years it kept growing. So we had to go to a bigger venue and stuff. So that's what we do, and it's free. It's a free event that we hold every year, that the Lord has provided the funds for, to be able to do it every single year, you know. And so it's been such a blessing to be able to mentor men that were hard-headed just like me. I'm like, really, Lord, did I was that like me, you know?
Right.
But it gives me an opportunity to be transparent with them and let them know that, man, if God can change me, he can change anybody. Because I mean, I was not a very good, I mean, on the outside everything looked good, but my heart was so wicked. My heart was so dark. And I'm just thankful to the Lord that he changed that.
Amen. I'm thinking about Galatians 3, For I've been crucified with
Yes.
Christ. Nevertheless, I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live in this flesh, I live because
Yes.
of the faith in the Son of God who
Absolutely.
loves me and gave himself for me. There's a person that I follow with their Bible commentaries, and they call it the execution stake. And that we have to submit to the execution stake, which is basically the act of sanctification and dying to self, and so that we can live as those warriors that he made us to be. And those warriors are not, they're not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not what we think of when we think of a warrior. They're steadfast, they're fighting for righteousness, but they also have a heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in the process, it really showed me how to live a selfless life.
Yeah.
Because that's how I can be see, I don't want to be, my main ministry is my wife,
Yes.
my home. That's my focus and my prayer for every day is I want to be a better husband than I was yesterday, Lord. I want to treat, because I treated my wife horribly. I spoke some evil things to her. I spoke down to her, and one of the promises that I made her when we got remarried was I would always lift her up. I would never curse at her. I would never speak down to her for the rest of my life. I mean, I never held any promise to her. I broke every single promise I ever made to her, but this one I intend to keep, because I'm allowing God to continue to change me day in and day out, and I'm just so thankful that she's stuck by me and she's by my side now, and we're fighting this battle together. We're out on the battlefield together as husband and wife, as one, as a team. And I mean, you know, when we were, the church that we used to attend, after we served there faithfully for 8.5 years, the Lord finally said, this is it. I'm calling you guys out. And that's when he called us to plant a church, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We had no idea what we were doing, but we knew that we can trust God, and that he had the best things in line for us.
And so when did this happen? How long ago?
This happened in 2012.
Okay. Okay. And tell us the name.
Majesty Worship Center.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And you know, it's the way we came up with the name is I believe that God brought it together, because when I gave my life to the Lord, that song was playing. That was
Majesty.
Majesty. That's the song that was playing. So I just fell in love with that song. I had never listened to worship ever. I had never I'm like, wow. I kept thinking in my mind like the way you see on TV and but anyway. So one day my brother was having a little tent revival in Chama, and he called me up and he says, hey, you guys want to come out here and help? So we went up to Chama, and on our way up there, we were listening to the radio, and we're talking, and the song came up. Yes. And my wife immediately said, Majesty Worship Center.
That's the name of our church.
That's the name of our church.
Yeah, that gives me chills.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what we done was, when we got up there, we went to the Family Dollar, got a cardboard, and wrote Majesty Worship Center and put it on the tent, and that's where the first service was, as we call it, But but God is good. God is good, and through our whole situation, my parents came to the Lord. I mean, our whole family.
Yes.
Oh.
Our whole family
Wow.
is now
Redemption.
in service. Yes, and
Oh, that's awesome.
and to have my parents and to be part of our congregation is just. I mean, when I get up there every morning, and to see them, it's a blessing.
Wow. Well, I know we're going to be sharing more in just a few minutes, but just wanted to, again, encourage those of you that are viewing this. Nothing is impossible with God.
Amen.
And he loves each and every one of us. He just says, call unto me, and I will answer you, and I will show you great and mighty things that you can't even imagine. So if you need prayer today, If you need somebody to stand in agreement with you according to the Word of God, give us a call. Right there, the number is 505-345-4165. He loves you. He knows what's going on. He just wants you to call upon Him and ask for the help so that He can show Himself great and mighty. He gets all the glory and the honor and the praise. We're going to be right back with more with Pastor Alfonso and Patricia right after this.
When I was in New Mexico, of course, I learned a lot of things, and I've discovered a bunch of things that are important. God is doing something here. I can sense that, and I can see it. But one of the things that we need to do is encourage you to become a part of helping us reach the people with the good news of Jesus Christ, right here on this television station. And when you do that, it's incredible how many people begin to listen and understand and yeah, maybe I should make a decision for the Lord, and then they meet the Lord. The Holy Spirit changes them forever. If you call 505-345-1991 and make a pledge in any amount, whatever God speaks to your heart, that's important because these people love the Lord here. And I want to tell you something. We are thrilled to be a part of this station. So you need to make sure that you make your pledge by 505-345-1991. Stand with us in this end of time so that we understand God is doing with us what He needs to do with this world.
Well, we're back with Pastor Alfonso and Patricia Antillon with Majesty Worship Center Church. And you know, we were talking about that and how He gave you the name, and you also mentioned Soldiers of the Cross. So that was your first ministry that you were doing. But I have a question. Do you have a website or something where some way for people to get in touch with you to get more information?
Yeah, we have a website. It's majestyworship.org. You can go on there, or you can give the church a call at 505-261-5667. Seven. Almost forgot.
One flash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Because I'm sure there are people that are listening, whether it's themselves that are going through, or that they've got a relative or a friend or someone that really needs some help and some encouragement. And you know, there's a lot of people that need help, but that help needs to be in the form of encouragement that you can do this, that you're not lost, you know, that there's always a way out if you turn to the Lord.
Exactly.
You know, there's nothing impossible for Him. And you know, living a life of faith is exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
Yes, it is.
It's, you know, and our daily struggles, our daily lives, you know, we have to seek first the Lord in everything we do, and there's no way that we can be where we're at today if it wouldn't have been for His hand upon us.
Yes.
And just the kind of love that He's allowed me to have towards my wife, like a husband should have. And you know, that's what really changed my whole demeanor, my whole life completely. Understanding God's love and how much He loves us and what He allowed Jesus to do for us, and just by that, by giving His life for us, that we were just here, you know, and it's just, I mean, it's still mind-boggling. You're like, wow, you know. So that helps me continue to pursue my wife, like I'm supposed to, and you know, and she reminds me if I fall short, she reminds me. You know, but that's my purpose. My purpose is to really let my wife know that you have a keeper here for good, that's going to always be there to support you and uplift you, and I will never, ever do anything that goes against God. And you know, it's like our relationship isn't perfect, but the way we deal with it now is God's always in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And He's the one that always gives us the guidance and the direction that we need to take and we need to go. And so we're just so thankful.
Yes. You know, a lot of times we get into relationships, into marriages, we fall in love and we're just, you know, head over heels for each other. But there's nothing like being loved by a person who loves God first.
Yes.
Because then God is pouring His love through that channel
Exactly.
into each other. And it's just, so amazing that, I mean, it's and the power of agreement. Talk about that, because I mean,
Yes.
there, you know, we read about it in the Word, where two or more come together in His name, He's in the midst.
Yes.
And so when you pray, there is something that happens. There's a synergy there that takes
Exactly.
place when you're in agreement. Like you said, it's the threefold cord. But talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
What
It
you've
activates the
experienced there.
supernatural.
It does.
You know, when you come to an agreement with your wife in prayer, I mean, sometimes God doesn't answer your prayers in your specific time,
Yeah.
but He will answer them. I mean, that's no doubt about it, because He's answered all of ours. You know, our biggest prayer was for our families to come to salvation and
Yeah.
and to just have that relationship with the Lord, and just to keep us humble and keep us in a place of, you know, before I used to think humble was like a weakness, but it's actually a strength. It's a strength, you know, and it's something that we've taken on, and being transparent about it with our church, with our family, and just saying, hey, this is who we are. I mean, this is how we live our life. I mean, we love each other, we love God, and we'll do whatever we can to help others and helping others in need. But you know, the best thing that I can say to the men is that it's time to man up. It's time to take your wife by the hand and ask for forgiveness, because you know, sometimes we hurt them so bad and we just like, oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and then move on.
Yeah.
But true repentance and true forgiveness is so much
Absolutely.
different.
It is. It's deeper.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry I got caught. I'm sorry I did this, but until the next time. But it's just like when we offer repentance to God, it's like we're willing to turn the opposite direction of that specific sin. We want to turn away, and sometimes we treat our wives awful. We yell at them, and one excuse that and I'm going to say it, that I've heard a lot is, well, I'm just human. I'm just human. But when people say that, we're just giving an excuse to act the way we act. Is that we're not just human anymore. We're spiritual beings now. We have a relationship with
That's
our
right.
Father,
That's right.
with our Creator. So I mean, there's things that have to stop. And when I gave up drinking, when I gave up pornography, when I gave up, I wasn't like a spirit-filled man. I had just given my life to the Lord, but I knew that this was wrong, because God instills those morals in you since birth. I mean, I knew these things were wrong, but I continued to do them because I enjoyed them, until the Lord came and really brought that conviction, and I said, enough is enough. I had to make that decision. I can't tell my wife, oh, I'm sorry, babe, I committed adultery on you today, but I'm just human. You know what I'm saying? It's just, we have to get to a point that we have to recognize our sin and bring it to the Lord and say, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I'm really calling out to all the men,
Good.
especially that are watching, because when's enough going to be enough? I mean, we go to church, we play like we have this, and then we get home and we treat our families like garbage. And that has to stop, because I've seen it firsthand. And that has to stop. We have to start being men and rise up as men of God, men of integrity,
Yeah.
and be the men that God has called us to be.
Amen. And when you do that, and like we talked about earlier, that when He's your first love, and His love flows through you to one another, do you find that really you are able to love God in a
Yes.
deeper way?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And you know, and we really become one, because I'm like, sometimes it kind of like freaks me out, but like my wife literally will finish my sentences, or she'll know my thoughts, or it's like, wow. It's just amazing that you really become one flesh when you're both seeking the same thing,
Yeah.
when you both have living a spirit-filled life, and
Right.
you know, because we have to understand that we've been perfected by the blood of Jesus Christ, by His death, burial, and resurrection. So we have to walk in that. We have to believe His promises for us,
Exactly.
and it's just amazing. I wouldn't have anybody else by my side than my beautiful wife with me, in this journey, and she loves my family. She loves my parents. She loves my parents like her own, and you know, and helping us, you know, helping them, you know, get them to their appointments and stuff, while I can't be there, You know, so it's amazing. It's amazing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you're getting this whole thing down about being pastors and having a church?
You know, Linda, 3 years before I met my husband, when the Lord gave me that vision of him, the Lord also told me that he would be a pastor.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes. And on our very first date, I told him, one day you're going to be a pastor. Well, he had a Budweiser in one hand and a cigarette in another hand, and he's like, oh, that's good,
Yeah.
you know. And let me tell you that the times I did go and pick him up because he was too drunk to drive, and I would have to pull over in the corner so he could, you know, vomit behind a bush or whatever. I'm like, Lord, I'm sorry, I don't see it. I know you wouldn't lie to me. I know what I heard. I know what I saw, but I don't see it. This man's an alcoholic. And I would cry out more to the Lord, and I would say, Lord, I'm trusting in your faithfulness, but how long? How long? But we have to understand as women, we have to pray for our husbands, not in this time and space, but in eternity. In eternity, and say, God, I know it's not going to be today. I would like it to be today, and you could make it happen today.
For God it is.
But it's going to be in your timing. And I know you're working on him. And there was times, Linda, I didn't want to pray for this man.
Yeah.
There was times when he would come home after a couple of days of not being home, when I had to do his laundry and there was lipstick on his collar, and it was like, I'm done praying. And then the Lord told me, you're not done praying. So when I prophesied that over in his life, that he was going to be a pastor someday, it was even hard for me to see it. But I'll repeat it again. God's never failed me.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And that was in 99.
Yeah, that was in 99.
Wow.
And so, I mean, and also at that time, the Lord had really put in my heart to pray for his brother Julio. His brother Julio was an alcoholic too. And I would say, Lord, I have enough on my hands trying to pray for this one, you know, and you want me to add Julio too? Okay. So I began to pray for Julio without knowing, for his salvation. And the Lord would just tell me, pray for his salvation, pray for his salvation. So I would pray for him. Well, that day that my husband decided to put a gun in his mouth and end his life, it was Julio that called him. In a sense, God used that telephone call to stop the bullet. But my prayers were answered after 7 years.
Amen. Man, listen, yeah, we've run out of time, but you know what? I just want to encourage those of you. And when is your services? When are your services?
On Sunday at 9 in the morning, and on Wednesdays at 6:30.
Okay.
And he also has a men's discipleship on Thursday evening, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, we want you to know that we just really appreciate you being here, and
thank you for having us.
you know, I believe many people will hear this and that lives are being changed beyond what we even can imagine. And again, we want to encourage you to call the station, to call the prayer line. God does love you so much. He loves all of us, and he's no respecter of persons. What he's done for them, he will do for you. So call us, 345-4165. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you. May he lift his countenance upon you and give you his everlasting shalom. Shalom, shalom.
Your financial support is appreciated. Go to P.O. Box 4338, Albuquerque, New Mexico 87196. Call us today at 505-345-1991 or go to sunbroadcasting.org.